TV Live, wherever you might be tuning on, welcome on KDRTV Live. As we said again moments ago, we are honored again to continue our conversation around driving a positive diaspora narrative. And we've had a chance to talk to two absolutely brilliant African immigrants who are running for state political offices here in the state of Minnesota. Started off with Barney Njenga, who's running for commissioner in Hennepin County, and also did just talk to moments ago Sarah Hauda, who's also running for the state Senate from Scott County here in the state of Minnesota. That's fascinating, and I think quite a promise for the African immigrants here in the United States, really indicating that this is home, and we're here to build a story not for ourselves, but for our children and generations to come. I think there's a huge population of immigrants across the country, and more so here in the state of Minnesota, where I think now it's been described as one of the most friendly, immigrant-friendly state in the nation, with thousands and thousands, I think now going to millions of immigrants coming from the continent of Africa and elsewhere around the world to this state, and really we're going to get into the discussion around what does it really mean by having these huge numbers. We have thousands of people from great nations across Africa, whether it's Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Somalia, Ethiopia, Somalia, all those countries across Africa were represented here. And also there are many others who have great interest in the continent of Africa. But perhaps the big question that we haven't asked ourselves that we should now be asking and start this conversation around, how do we make use of these huge numbers? To help us do this, we'll be talking to our good friend and one of the, I think, one of the most successful African immigrants here in the state of Minnesota, our brother and Tanzania's own Nasibu Sareva, who's joining us here live now. Hi, my brother Nasibu, how are you?
Hello, good morning, Dr. Okari. I'm pretty good, thank you. How are you today?
I'm doing good. It's very good to see you and very good to have you on the show today.
It is a pleasure to be on the show. First of all, I would like to thank KDRTV for invitation and holding this very important conversation. Secondly, I would like to really thank you for your leadership, and honored to be with you this morning and hosting this conversation. And last but not least, to all the viewers of KDRTV.
Okay, very good, Nasibu. For those of us who have known you for as long as we have, 2 decades plus, we know you as one of the most dynamic African leaders here. You've done exceptionally well in business. You've really done great work helping the community, and I think African Development Center in Minneapolis is a good story, a great inspirational story for us and everybody. Quite frankly, I think you're affecting this population positively in the social and economic aspects. Yes, we know you. I know you very good. For our viewers, do you mind very quickly introducing yourself?
Thank you so much, Dr. Okari. Yes, my name is Nasibu Sareva, born and raised in Tanzania. Professionally, I'm a number guy with a BA in accounting and finance, and MBA with accounting emphasis, and a bunch of other certifications of accounting. Came to the U.S. In 2001 with really just one intention to change the world. I worked for a corporate world before. I did a little bit of community work when I worked for corporate. So when I came to the U.S., my real intention was, I think I was done with the corporate world, and really wanted to figure out some ways to change the world. Here I am today. We do what we do, and feel so happy when I put smiles into our communities.
Okay, great work, and that reminds me that we came to the U.S. around the same time, 2001. I can't believe it's been 19 years ago. I came in as a young guy. Now I'm getting great. It's interesting. It's interesting how times change. Good. So, Sareva, just like I did to the previous panelist, obviously we're talking about a positive diaspora narrative. But before we get into the niche details of our discussion today around the African Development Center, let's talk about COVID-19. I think it's affected, and quite frankly, it's transformed the way we do things. Individually, personally, I've been working from home for almost the rest of the beginning of the year, and most likely to sometime next year. And I think it's affected businesses, families, and even the world community now is responding differently. And interestingly, and unfortunately, even our president right now in a hospital because of COVID-19. And that's a big statement as to how serious this virus is. But let's focus on you, yourself, as a person, as a family, and professionally, how you're handling it.
No, thank you so very much, Dr. Okari. First of all, would like to send my prayers to the President, First Lady, and all who have who got affected by this really crazy disease. Personally, it's been a challenge, frankly speaking. I have two people in the front lines. I have two RINs in the family. You know, my family, my wife and daughter. So we have really been taking one day at a time. They have been taking care of COVID infected patients. You know, they have been tested on a weekly basis so far. So far, so good. Again, as I said, we have really been taking one day at a time. Professionally, with me, it has really been different compared to a bunch of other people. I did not have a luxury of actually most of the time to work from home. I've actually been going to work. As we may all know that, you know, the pandemic started sometimes with all these new details that are coming out, but it really affected the state in really big numbers, sometimes in March. So we've had our offices at the African Development Center closed ever since due to some of the great decisions that were made by the governor. However, because of the COVID, then later followed by the civil unrest due to killing of George Floyd, I have actually been going to work ever since. So we have been managing, administering some of federal and state relief programs. Right away after the first governor executive order, the governor and the legislators were able to put forth some funding, of which we had to do some zero interest loans between 2,500 to 35,000 to help some of these small businesses to survive, pay some of their bills. We were able to do that within very few weeks. That tells you right away that we had to stay in the office. Later on, we did a few of our federal programs. So as I'm speaking to you right now, we're still doing some other state local programs, like one from Minnesota did, about $10,000 to small businesses. Plus, we're helping really micro businesses between 3,000 to 5,000 within the Hennepin County.
Okay. So, Sareva, nice, thank you for that good intro, and I think sharing your views that your family members are the front line. We wishing them the best, obviously, and our viewers. Again, we keep echoing this same call. COVID-19 is serious. Please take care of yourself. That's important. We need you. We need all of you. I think we need to do as best as we can, follow the guidelines, so that we really be around here to do the very best. I think for most of us do know who the African Development Center is, especially for those ones who are running small businesses here in the state of Minnesota. I'll encourage you, as we continue the conversation with Nasibu, please feel free to post some of your questions or comments. And Nasibu might have time to answer some of the questions as we go through the conversation. And I think African Development, quite frankly, has done some of the best, I think, brilliant work that you guys have done over the last a decade plus that I've got to know you. But for our viewers who probably do not know what African Development is, and more especially small businesses and those ones hoping to have small business, Nasibu, do you mind talking very quickly or give a quick background who African Development Center is and what you guys do?
Thanks much, Dr. Okara. So the African Development Center is a not-profit community developer and commercial lender dedicated to economic empowerment and success of African migrants throughout the state. So we are a statewide organization with 3 satellite offices, talking about transferable or generational wealth. We own the building that we are in here in the Twin Cities. We bought another building in Wilma where we house one of our satellite offices, and we have 2 more satellite offices, one in Rochester, and we just opened one in St. Cloud. Our mission is to grow business, build wealth, and increase investment in the African communities in Minnesota. So ADC in a nutshell, ADC was launched because existing economic development organizations lacked the resources needed to address the financial, cultural, and language barriers that hinder African immigrants from achieving self-sufficiency. Our aim is to facilitate economic integration as well as the civic and social participation that the market of a vibrant and healthy community. Cultural competence is the key to ADC high level of success in meeting our objective. So the African Development Center is a CDFI. What is a CDFI? It's a financial institutions that going through the certification through the Treasury Department that provides credit and financial services to underserved markets and populations. ADC is also SBA lender. Within the SBA lender, we pay attention to. We are part of a couple programs. So we do SBA micro loans, of which allows us to do working capital loans up to $50,000, and we've been blessed to get some funding for us to do these loans within this particular program. We are also SBA Community Advantage lender. So this is part of the SBA 7A program for people who are familiar with this program. But this program allows ADC to do loans up to $250,000. So with that $50,000 of working capital, ADC can easily do a loan to any particular immigrant-owned business up to actually $300,000. We continue to be creative and figure out some other ways that we can actually bring more capital that is really very needed to our community.
So, Nasibu, thank you. Thank you for that quick background. I think, like I said with the previous guests, we're talking about African communities here in the U.S., and I know we'll get into the numbers momentarily. We've been talking about the negative stories. There's a lot of challenges really affecting the community. But honestly, and by the way, we have some people watching from Africa, it's not only negative stories. We also have very positive stories. And now people are watching you right now and who will be watching the show days after today, and they might say, oh, what did he say? Did he say African development that sponsors businesses? So if you want to speak directly to especially the African immigrants, what are some of the specific programs that, products that you have? And somebody running a small business or hoping to run a small business will say, oh, wow, I'm going to go to ADC.
Great question, Dr. Okari. So ADC, we are very laser focused when it comes to our programs. We've decided to continue to do that. Even though we do a bunch of other things like advocacy work and a few other things, we're really laser focused into three key programs that we deliver, which is one, financial literacy education, two, home ownership training, and three, business development. So with the financial literacy education, as we all know that as immigrants arrive in Minnesota, they bring a high level of capacity and drive. We all know that, but have few assets and often, more often than not, very limited experience with the Western financial institutions. So to help, ADCs offers customized training on issues such as building a credit score, personal debt management, basic banking, household budgeting, and savings for college or a home, customized to the specific needs of the recipient. These sessions are usually, especially with that has to do with personal financials are sensitive in nature. So because of that, we do private sessions. And then we go down to the training as of, what is a checking account? How can you open checking account? How can you actually maintain and establish your credit? So we go really that low to make sure that people really don't understand the financial system of this country, get to know what they need to do to get ready. And within the home ownership training, so ADC, first-time home buyer workshop and counseling program prepares and support African immigrants and other low to moderate income in a minority household using the home stretch curriculum. This is part of Minnesota home ownership curriculum that people are required to do if they need to get down payment assistance. So this program prepares prospective homeowners with the resources and knowledge about home buying process, requirement, and best practice that help ensure long-term home ownership success, of which, because of going through these programs, a lot of African immigrants who actually bought homes during the economic crisis in 2008, 2009, we didn't see a lot of them actually going under in terms of their home ownership. And the lastly but not least is business development. So we all know entrepreneurship is an attractive option for many immigrants. We all know that statistics have shown either immigration overall in the country or immigration here in the state of Minnesota, which we go back way back to the Danish, to the Norwegians, to the Jewish, that through entrepreneurship, immigrants have been able to do really, really well. But access to conventional loans is difficult. So ADC offers development workshops, one-on-one technical assistance, and a small business financing that is tailored to the circumstances of African immigrants, as well as alternative financing options. So through the training program, prospective entrepreneurs receive information on how to start businesses, with information covering writing a business plan, obtaining insurance, and addressing best way to market businesses. Okay. One-on-one technical assistance is providing to those attended the class, as well as existing businesses owners. Last but not least, this individualized direct support helps owners with obtaining permits, licenses, and other requirements to operate small businesses in this country. So technically, we really go into a lot of nitty-gritty to make sure that people understand how to run business in this country.
So I'm glad, as you responded, I like the fact that you talked about cultural sensitivity. And I think some people, especially the immigrants, sometimes get nervous that if they apply for loans, particularly with the mainstream financial institutions, that might be problematic, including the fact that your last name might also be an issue. And I'm happy that, in fact, your good friend Jean Galgalo from Little Africa will be on the show again next week also to talk about the intersection of culture and development. I think that's good to see these positive stories come on. But for people watching you, and obviously will be watching later, what do they need to do to get funding from ADC? And if they do get funding, is there any other additional support that you provide them?
Yes, Dr. Okari, we do. So the first thing that I would advise, because we've created a very good and simple process and procedures that will actually help everybody to undergo so that they can work with us and get funded. Which starts, if you've not been in business for over 1 year, we would like you to go through our business plan class. Statistically, out of over $15 million that we've deployed, it has shown that people who have actually gone through this business plan class have been very successful. Now, usually, out of people who attend the business plan class, only 20% will say that we're ready to actually go through financing program right away. For us, that's success, because what we're really instructing into this class is more into the experience that we have had in the over 600 businesses that we've helped, loans that we've put together. So we're really talking about the real-time experience that we need these people to make sure they're actually ready to get into business. So when people get back and say, no, we don't think we're ready, we will come back later for actually financing stage. For us, that is really a success story. And once you are done with the class, the only thing that I usually tell our community is that we get a lot of people come to us who says they needed money yesterday. If you work with us, we will make sure that you get funded, because the only difference is we may tell you that, we think you need 1 or 2 extra days before we actually fund your business. But we are very, very flexible in terms of risk level management, in terms of how we analyze deals. And with all due respect, Dr. Okari, what I tell our community, and I really still believe that is true, if we actually get to the final answer and say we don't think we're going to be able to finance your business now, that means you've decided not to work closely with us. With all due respect, I don't believe that there's anybody else that's going to be able to actually touch your business in the country. So that's how deep we have been analyzing this particular project. And the last question quickly here. Yes, we continue to offer, we do a lot of pre-technical assistance, pre-loan technical assistance, and we do heavily post-loan technical assistance. So you will continue to get our support, not only when you actually have loan with us, but also after you have actually paid off and when you actually continue to grow your business.
Okay. Oh, good, Sareva. Thank you for those insights. Again, for those ones who are running small businesses, feel free to post your questions on Facebook. We'll have a minute or so for Nasibu to respond to those questions. If you intend to run business as well, please have that question for him in a moment. So let's move further. You and I have had this private conversation, and I think one of the key highlights from our private conversations is what you call the power of numbers. That we are talking about here, and I like the way you said in the intro, you came here to change the world. And I'm sure almost every immigrant who came to this nation came here to achieve the quote-unquote American dream. Of course, that is questionable depending on what you define as success. But let's get into the numbers itself. And obviously, you're a numbers guy. We now have a huge population of immigrants across the nation, and more specifically here in the state of Minnesota. From your end, Nasibu, how do we make use of these numbers? And I think some people, unfortunately, and I repeat that, unfortunately, we tend to look ourselves as people based on our ethnic groups. So, for example, if I'm Kenyan, I look at myself at the tribal level, which is okay, but I think that's a narrow way of looking at things. Or if, say, I'm Kenyan, I tend to look at myself as Kenyan, and still that's fairly narrow in the face of really the potential that we have here. But if you look at anybody who's born in the continent of Africa and who's come here willingly to achieve the American dream, if we put those numbers together, I think we can achieve big things. From your end, how do we make use of those numbers? And if any, are there numbers to support that power?
Yes, Dr. Okari. What a great question. So let me put it in a very layman term here first. When we talk about power of numbers here. So if you look into the number of African immigrants that are in the state of Minnesota right now, we have enough number. If we are coordinated better, if we are organized better, we should be able to influence any decision that is being always made for us. Now, if you look into if some of your viewers have followed Council Member Abdi Wassame, right before he was elected, we were at the 10th year where we have to do the redistricting. So when we were doing that, one of the things that he did really well, he actually made sure that he was at the table when they're actually doing that. And then he pushed for that policy to be done right. And when you do that, they were able to put one segment of our community within the area that actually he was running for that council member seat. You see? So when people were voting, we all know how much he has won. You know, so we have really enough large number of immigrants. If you're talking about, these are undisputed numbers. If you're talking about over 150,000 immigrants, now we're talking to the first generation here. We have the second generation. That's going to be a conversation for another day. So with that, of which I'm really very excited. I've been watching Sahara here in your previous session, of which we need more of her. Again, if we coordinate better, if we organize better, we should have way more elected officials moving forward than what has been done before. But again, the key here is coordinate, organize better, and that should do it for us. Then people will not continue making decisions on our behalf.
Oh, you know, so Nasibu, as we go further, as you're talking, the other day I was looking at the numbers from the state, and this is really real for our viewers, especially here in the state of Minnesota. I was looking at what they're calling or defining as minorities. They're saying children who are below age of 10 and who belong to whatever they're calling the minorities are more than the Caucasians. So that means in the next decade, in 10 years' time, we're going to have more minorities into the workforce, and therefore the minority will be driving the socio-economic and indeed the political agenda of the state. So the question then becomes, if we don't really put ourselves together, or if we remain as divided as we are, it's likely that we won't be able to achieve big things, and actually we won't even be able to make the state compete across the nation. From your end, I have my views as to why we're having these problems, but from your end, what do you think are the three biggest challenges for us? And when I talk about us, and you know that Saraha was talking about we, our. What are the three greatest challenges that are facing us from achieving our common goal?
A great question. So, so I really like the previous session that Sarah was talking about we, and I think we should learn from that, and we should continue to do that. I think one of the biggest challenges, which you've mentioned, that we're doing a lot of I when we come here into the U.S. There is before you go into a lot more details here, there was a model that was done in Portland, Oregon, which is a coalition of community of colors. Why am I actually quoting this model? So far, this could be, if not the only model, is one of very few models that was able to actually put all people of color together, and then they started advancing interest of the whole perspective of their own perspective communities together. Now, here it is. Let me give you a little bit of facts here, because I visited, was honored and blessed to actually visit the leaders of the coalition of community of colors in Portland, Oregon, and I had spent about 3 to 4 days with them. So it took them 13 years to put 7 different communities together. I'm not saying that it's going to take us 13 years. I'm saying that if we look into that model, I think we can do a little bit faster and we can do it better. But another example that I'd like to give it to you, within that model, within the 7 communities, people can actually Google that, Coalition of Community of Colors in Portland, Oregon. The African House, which is led by an African immigrant brother, it took him 3 years to put everybody at the table. It took him 2 years to put people from one country at the same table, to actually having a conversation that we're having right now. So it is not very easy. However, if you look into all the challenges that we are all going through are pretty much similar. If you look into who is actually making decisions for us, they are the same people who are making decisions for us. If you're not careful, we're going to continue to be divided. So we have a few leaders who actually prefer us to be divided than us to be at the same table and make these decisions for our own selves. You see, so there are models that have worked, and looking into the leaders that we have in these states, looking into some of the things that we've done, I really think and feel that we are far ahead on so many ends that we have already done in these states, and we're not going to be a better really community unless we all sit down together and figure out some ways so that we can work as one community. As the governor said, one Minnesota, we need to be one community. I'll give you one simple example, which I'm not really propagating that we all should do that, but I've seen in the previous election, in the previous primary, whereby we have a couple African immigrants running against each other, against maybe incumbent, you see. So those, I think, are some of the things. Once we are coordinated better, organized better, we want everybody to participate in that civic engagement. However, if you're coordinated better, then we should have some of the seats that we have actually lost.
Okay, good. You mentioned several times about table, and previously you did talk to me. This is interesting phrase. If you are not on the table, and then you're on the menu. What does this phrase really mean? I think put this really in a layman's language, and I was thinking about me being on the table or me being on the menu, and I was thinking about McDonald's, and I look at that menu, I'm looking at salad, I'm looking at the burger, and I'm saying, no, I'm not the burger, I'm not the salad. Maybe try to explain. I know you're a soft-spoken and an eloquent guy. Can you explain that to our viewers? What does that really mean? If you're not on the table, then you're on the menu. What does that really mean to our collective being?
Great question, Dr. Okari. So, again, I've seen this personally into a lot of tables that I'm setting that actually I don't see ourselves. But again, in a very layman term, if you are not represented at the decision-making table, if you are not represented, you are sitting at a very vulnerable position. You get left out. And the worst case scenario yet is you are on the menu. So, again, in a very layman term, so our interest, if we want our interest to be part of the either, leadership consideration, any type of leadership that we're talking about here, as they make plans and as they make decisions, we have to be at the table. But if we are not at the table, that means they will sit down and make all the decisions, whether it's going to be investment to our kids, whether it's going to be investment, access to capital. So they're going to make decisions based on a lot of assumptions because we are not there, especially when we talk about cultural competence. We are not there to make these decisions to ourselves. So others will make these decisions on our behalf. And I've seen a lot of that happening even here in the state of Minnesota. Now, let me make one more point here. You may have a seat as well, which I've seen a few companies, a few organizations with the conversations of, being inclusive that has been talked about, over and over again, which I encourage because that is very helpful. But you may be able to sit at the table, but at the end of the day, you actually don't have a voice. You see, so we need to be very careful with that because you are there, but your voice are not heard and not considered. So again, as I said, I've seen many times, and one of the very good examples is a few years ago when actually we had a special session, and there was a report that came out from the Susan Boer that says black folks, disposable income went down by, I believe, about 14%. So all of a sudden, everybody, started figuring out what should we do to make sure that we curb that. That included investment that came from the state. And then there was that special session, I believe it was $30 million or a little over $30 million that was actually passed in that special session. And guess what? I knew that, by the way, and then I had to push big time to make sure that our community is considered. So I keep going back over and over again and ask our community, I would like anybody to tell me how much actually out of that $30 million to $35 million investment our community was actually invested in. You see, so that's exactly what I'm talking about. If you're not at the table, then other people will make decisions as to, your community does not need that enough. I mean, they don't need anything, or this is all what they need. So we need to be at the table to make these decisions on ourselves, of which, again, as I said, I'm so excited with having a lot of our own people running for elections.
So Nasib, as you talk about that, sometimes those of us who've been around here, I can't tell you how much sometimes I walk into the classrooms and I hardly see students from the African continent. Once some do, I think that I see that sense of happiness. Here he is a brother, and I think they want to be there and go be beyond that. There's something that I've seen in our community, quite frankly, and I don't know how the best way to go forward. Maybe give us your take on this. I've seen that we're so much divided into different ethnic groups. Like I said, for example, my country, Kenya, different tribes, and we focus heavily own tribes. You see, you're making the case for Tanzania. I have a lot of friends from Uganda, friends of Cameroon, of Ethiopian, Somalians. I have all these groups from across Africa. Whenever I have a conversation with them, I honestly don't see the difference. The difference is pretty much the same. It's not really a difference. Going forward, how do we really move beyond this tribal, ethnic, and national differences so that we can have a common front?
Dr. Okari, what a great question. I have experienced and see exactly the same thing. I think one of the things that I hope is not happening is us giving up. I think we should do a lot of convening. I think we should do a lot of education. I think we should take what had happened in our past as actually a good experience on what we want to do and actually create our own narrative on what we want to do in the future. Because what I have often seen is that people are giving up and say, somebody has tried and it didn't work. And who do you think you are that you want to do? And what exactly you want to do different so that it's going to work? I think we should do a lot of convening, a lot of discussion, and we should continue and hopefully create our own narrative. Again, as I said, take past as an experience and actually move forward. As far as I'm concerned, I'm cautiously optimistic. I really think that this is doable, but we need to do more convening of all of us and figure out what will be the best way forward. Again, I don't want to create an agenda. I think we should, again, as I said, we should create our own narrative. So we should create our own agenda as to what we need to do moving forward. Let me give one short, quick example here. There was a time where I was talking to our counterparts, African Americans, about this type of issue. What should we do so that we can work together better? And one of the points that was made in that convening was that we don't want to go back into many years ago, whereby we had a lot of social interaction. So we need now to mean business and reduce those social interaction and start doing something that are actually having tangible results. I had a meeting that I convened a few years ago with our own brothers and sisters, leaders of African immigrants. That was only one meeting. Now, to finalize here, when we had that meeting, I said a couple of things. One, I don't want to create an agenda. We should create a community agenda. Okay. And two, what I said is there's so many things that we don't do. And when we are looking into the past experience, we may not want to look into our counterpart who said for over 200 years, they were doing a lot of social interaction. Now they need to do some things that are tangible. Maybe we should start where they started and then change the way we can do moving forward by making sure that we do a lot of convening, we support each other, we support our businesses, we support our communities, because at the end of the day, our challenges are pretty much similar to our counter brothers and sisters.
Okay, sounds good, and I think that's part of what we're doing here, KDRTV. Our commitment is to make sure that we create a forum where all immigrants, particularly from the continent of Africa, can come here and exchange these kind of ideas. And I think in the past weeks we've been doing this, going around the African communities and having African community leaders to come here and have a conversation around the issues that are affecting us. And I'm glad that the business community is also coming on board. You're coming on board, and my good friend and our good friend Jean Galgalo will be joining us here next week to talk about the same again. So I think that's important if we could really continue that conversation. We'll get somewhere. I think that's the most important thing. So let's move quickly before we end the conversation here and talk about what's going on in the country, the campaigns and the elections. I think most people have described it as the most consequential election of our lifetime. In your view, what do you think is very consequential, and why should people vote?
Great question, Dr. Okari. So we all know that that we all need to vote, and why do we need to vote, apart from this being the most consequential election probably in my American lifetime? So, the power to decide the quality of life that we all want, for our own souls, the power to decide the quality of life for our kids in the future. It's all in the ballot. That's why we should actually vote. You see, there is if there's any issue that we all support, so this could be, public transportation. This could be, we need more investment to, schools for our children. This could be actually, again, going to go back to public transportation to our African immigrants communities in various communities. This could be, the fact that when we come to this country, we take any job that we want. If you want to push for a minimum wage to be increased, if we need any sort of actually meaningful investment, one of the ways, if not the most important way for us to actually do impact that, is for us to go to the polling booths. It's for us to actually vote. Because if we don't vote, we go back to if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, because we are letting other people elect other people who don't have our interest to actually, at the end of the day, come back and actually make decisions on our behalf. You see, so it is really, really very important for us to make sure that we vote. And I really want to, let me underscore this point. Not voting is actually giving up for our voice. So if you're not voting, regardless of the situation that you have, regardless of the discussion that you have, regardless of how you feel about these elections and the candidates, let us make sure that we vote, because if you don't, you are actually giving up to a vote. Again, all the decisions when it comes to the, let's say, tax dollars that we actually all make a lot, which that could be a conversation for another day, as to how much immigrants contributes in terms of the tax dollars to the state and how much exactly the immigrants are actually getting back in terms of the investment. Again, that's a conversation for another day, but the election actually help us to make that decision in terms of how we're going to spend the tax dollars that we actually all contribute into. So this is crucial, and I urge everybody to really go and vote.
Oh, thank you. Nasibu, I think what Mwala is asking simply is how can they get connected with the African Development Center?
Great question. So one, if you go to www.adcminnesota.org, adcminnesota.org, you will find our information there. You'll find, my name, my contacts, and all ADC staff. Please shoot us an email, call us. You're going to find all of our phone calls. We would love to talk to the viewers and everybody who would like to sit down and have a conversation.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think that should be it. Nasib, I think it's been a great talking to you, but I think I'm going to give you one last minute. There are people watching you, I think, from the business community, the immigrant community here in the state of Minnesota, and others watching from across the country. What is your closing statement?
Dr. Okari, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so very much for, again, convening these great discussions. One of the things that I would like to highlight here as my closing statement is that it's been a long ride for our community. We have been here for about 15, 20 years now. One of the things that we don't do enough is talk about success stories of our community. We all know that we've created a culture. We've created a new ethnic, better community. We've developed transnational identities. We all know that we've introduced food and familiar to the American public. We've then turned around that old ethnic cuisines to mainstream style of cooking. We should make sure that we continue to talk more about our success stories. And our community is resilient. And one last thing is that, as Dr. Okari said in one of the sessions, this community is here to stay. We are really blessed and love to call these states of Minnesota home. And we need to come together, coordinate better, and push to advance our common interest of our community together. Thank you so very much, Dr. Okari.
Oh, thank you, Nasib. I think that that marks the end of our conversation. It's been very fascinating having you on. Thank you very much. And I think our viewers, especially those ones in the business community, small businesses, will be very fascinated to get to know more about ADC, African Business or Development Center. You guys are doing a fantastic job. And I think that's great. And I think thank you so very much. And thank you to your family. Thank you for the wonderful job you've been doing for not just the business community, but I think for the immigrant community. I think KDRTV salutes you. And I think for you, you're welcome anytime to advance the agenda for not ADC, but also for the immigrant community. Thank you again so much, Nasibu.
It's a pleasure, brother.
Good. And thank you for our viewers. Thank you. We've been talking to Nasibu Sareva from the African Development Center in Minneapolis, and I think they're doing a great job. I think there are some of the small businesses that are really focused on developing a very positive diaspora narrative. There are many good stories across the country of people who originated from Africa and that are doing great things. We'll continue going around communities to talk about some of these individuals so that it can be an inspiration for all of us as we drive that positive diaspora narrative. Before we conclude our session today, I want to thank our sponsors, Hennepin County, for sponsoring this show. Again, if you have any questions regarding the COVID-19, please feel free to call them at the number shown here on the screen, 612-348-3000. And if you're on the website at npin.us/COVID-19, feel free to go there and post any questions you have that is in regards to COVID-19. At the same time, before we sign off, we encourage you to go to our website, follow us there on Facebook, make your comments. We really welcome your positive feedback. As well, you can go to Twitter and also follow us on the same note. Don't forget also to go to YouTube and subscribe. As I said earlier, you don't have to pay anything. All you need to do is just click that subscribe button and you're good to go. You'll get our daily or weekly updates. Up next again, we'll be here. Up next on Thursday, we'll be talking about addiction and gambling. We'll be having Dr. Richard Oni and Billy Banjako. They'll be talking about addiction and gambling within the immigrant community. That'll be on Thursday at 7 Central Time. Don't forget again to join us next week at 11 Central Time when we bring on Little Africa with my good friend Jean Galgalo. They'll be talking about the culture and its intersection with socio-economic development. So that'll be next week again on Sunday at 11. And again, we'll be also having community leaders talk about the need for community leadership and partnerships before that. So again, next week. But for now, thank you so much for being with us again. Enjoy your Sunday and we'll see you soon. Coming up, I'm reminded to say community engagement, a further conversation after this commercial break.